Hello, my name's Alex, and welcome to the Inonda podcast. I thought I'd shoot a quick introduction to this interview right here, where I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Mr. Daniel Burrus. He is a leading futurist. He consults for presidents, kings, queens, sultans globally, and he is leading the charge with over 1 million followers on LinkedIn. And in this interview, he shares some of the hard trends and soft trends that shape our future, as well as sharing £1 million idea. So I'm really excited to share this one today with you guys. Hope you enjoy. I'm really excited about this conversation because of your background from a variety of things, not just your background and what you've, it seems like you've accomplished quite a few accolades that you can put under your belt, but also you've got a massive audience on LinkedIn. And my background is, I help companies grow on LinkedIn, and you've got 1 million. So when I saw that, I was just like, wow, this guy's, he's cracked the code for a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of codes. Number of followers is only one way to look at it, but the followers tend to be entrepreneurs, C-suite executives. I got a couple of prime ministers following me, so it's kind of like, who are the followers? And then secondly, for the last, now I'm coming up on 13 years, I've generated upper 6 and 7 figures every year on LinkedIn without spending any money on LinkedIn. So that's another good measure of how good you're doing, because that's over a decade of every year. And that's add up those millions. That's a lot. So anyway, and I've got a couple of million monthly blog readers because I'm syndicated, and I've got other big platforms. But I put my efforts social media wise mainly into LinkedIn because it's the biggest social media platform for business.
Yeah, no doubt. I really want to get into that as well because I want to know when you started to realize there was an opportunity there. I'm assuming you've been on it for a while, taking it seriously to get to that type of numbers and those results. But I just, in the first instance, just wanted to really just understand a bit more about yourself, Daniel. How, because one podcast I just recently just caught of yours, you spoke about some of your business accolades, and you've achieved quite some significant accolades there. But you've kind of got a passion for teaching. So
Yeah. I think I was put on the planet to teach. That's why I'm here. I don't
yeah.
want to just tell you some trends and say good luck. I want to empower all the people that I come in contact with things that they can use it professionally and personally with a
Mm.
mindset. It's about mindset, skill set, tool set.
Yeah, I've seen that you've got kind of an ethos on that, so would love to get into that. But I guess the first thing I must ask, Daniel, is just about yourself. How did you fall into this space? Because you've been around for a while now, and you've been able to predict some trends. So I wanted to just understand, how did you fall into this in the first place? Was it from birth, you kind of knew what you wanted to do? Did you have some experiences that helped guide you to the path that you're on now? How did it all start, Daniel?
Well, it's very interesting. I've had to think about it in hindsight a little bit, but even when I was very young, and I'm talking, like 8, 9, 10 years old, that bracket, a lot of times what I did is I would take myself out to being 90 or 100 years old and look back and then ask myself, what am I doing? And, am I creating a path that would be good?
Mm.
And interestingly enough, I've only gone to one, but a few years ago, I went to one of those high school reunions, and because I thought, hey, let's see what what they look like now, that kind of thing. And to my shock, and I had no idea, uh, the people that I was friends with back in those days, they were saying, "Oh yeah, you were always talking about the future." So maybe I'm just kind of wired that way, but I didn't really think about it. It's just the way it is. However, to answer your question, in college, I directed a federal research grant. I was the first to do that, and it wasn't because I was the smartest guy in the college. It was probably I was the only person ever thought of applying for a grant and getting one. But and I went on to teach biology and physics for a number of years, and really enjoyed teaching. I also love science, and I was always really interested in emerging technologies in all areas. I mean, I was always reading about it and collecting it. And when I read about a new technology, my head would go to how will it be applied? I mean, that's where I always jumped, just naturally. So I was not interested in just the tech, which allowed you to do something that was previously impossible. But how would it be used? Let me give you a quick example. A couple of years ago, in one of my newsletters, I reported about an innovation where a special type of paint can absorb light during the day, and at night it will give off the color of that paint. Now, now most people would read about that and say, oh, nice, and then go on about their business. I started thinking about, oh man, think about all of those little scooters that people in India are riding along on. They got family members on it. They got those crummy little lights on at night, a lot of accidents. What if they all glowed at night? And I started thinking about things like that. See, I just go to application right away. So I taught for a number of years, but I was always a little entrepreneurial. I put myself through college playing lead guitar in a rock and roll band. So I ran the band, and we actually made money. So I kind of like that part. But again, I like the teaching. I had an idea for an airplane design. One summer, I built it, test flew it, and it turned out to be a great plane. So I ended up with 37 national locations in the first year, got into business, started another company. So within 3 years, I had 4 different companies in 4 different areas doing a lot of disruption. They were doing well. However, I took myself out to being in my late 90s because I was about to open up a West Coast manufacturing plant. And I thought to myself, if this is how I'm going to live my professional part of my life, am I happy? The answer was no. So I knew right away I would have to sell all those companies. And I didn't want to go back to teaching because, frankly, none of us can go back. We can only go forward. And I didn't want to do what I've done before. So I used one of the principles that I teach. And now I'm going to take a moment to teach a principle. And that is to take your problems and skip them. And I use it all the time. It's called take your biggest problem and skip it. And in this case, I never liked the limitation of the classroom. I mean, I can only influence the students in the classroom. So I decided to skip that. I made the classroom planet Earth. I never liked the politics and so on of a university or an educational institution. So I skipped that. I work for me. I don't work for them. So I skipped all the things I didn't like about teaching. And then I spent a year, and now we're coming up to my research. I spent a year doing research where I researched all areas of technology, lasers, robots, genetics, fiber optics, artificial intelligence, neural networks, you name it. I was looking at it, and I dug in deep for about a year. And then I launched my business many decades ago. So we research all areas of technology, and companies don't hire me to do research. What they want to know is, how does my research apply to what they do? So what I'm really put on the planet to do is to teach. So in our time together, I want to teach. And if I can, with your permission, let me teach a major concept right now, if I can do that.
Please, Daniel.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. There's no shortage of trends. I mean, let's face it, we're going to spend the rest of our life in the future. Maybe we ought to think about it. And you're going to make all of your money, and all the money you're going to make from now on will be made in the future. All of the great things you do will not be done in the past. They'll be done in the future. So we should think about that. So there's no shortage of trends. The problem is which ones will happen and which ones won't. That's why we don't spend a lot of time thinking about trends. So what I've done is solve that problem. I found in my research that all trends fit into one of 2 categories. They're either a hard trend based on a future fact that will happen. Now, the litmus test for that is if it can be changed, it's not a hard trend. So, and I'm going to give you some examples in a minute. Just hang in there. So a hard trend is based on a future fact that absolutely will happen. What does that do for you? Number one, it gives you certainty in a seemingly uncertain world. And personal strategy and business strategy based on uncertainty has high risk. On the other hand, business strategy based on certainty has low risk and high reward. So it helps you to find certainty. What does that do? It helps you to see disruptions before they disrupt. so that you turn disruption into a choice. Frankly, in today's world, you're either going to be the disruptor or the disrupted. There is no middle. You're either going to be more relevant or less relevant. There is no middle. You cannot coast. Well, you can coast, but you can only coast downhill, and there is a bottom. So I want to make disruption a choice. And frankly, given that choice, I would rather be what I call a positive disruptor, creating the transformations that need to happen to elevate relevancy and accelerate growth. So it lets you see disruptions before they happen, giving you a choice. And the second of the two big things it does for you, other than giving you certainty, is it lets you see problems before you have them, so you can pre-solve them. I mean, how many times have people said, well, I knew that would happen? And I would say, then why did you let it? Let's pre-solve those future problems. So hard trends gives you certainty, lets you see disruptions before it disrupts. It lets you see problems before you have them, so you can pre-solve them. That's the hard trend part, but there are two types. The other type is a soft trend. Now, a soft trend is based on an assumption that may or may not happen. Now, remember, I didn't say it won't happen. I just said it's not certain. And when it comes to managing risk, certainty is a big thing. So what do I like soft trends? Oh, I love them. I love hard trends. I love soft. What do I love about a soft trend? If you don't like it, you can change it. So I know you've got a global audience. And I'll use a U.S. example I'm sure people have heard about. And that is that healthcare in the U.S. is unique and weird. And the cost of healthcare has been going up for decades. By the way, that's a trend, going up for decades. Now, if you think it's a hard trend, all of your strategies are about how do we manage paying for the aging baby boomers as they get older, since in the United States, 10,000 are turning 70 every day. How are we going to pay for that mess? And so that's what you do. But if you realize, wait a minute, even though that trend's been going on for a long time, that's not a hard trend, that's a soft trend. And if you realize rising healthcare costs is a soft trend, then you start looking at what are the strategies to reduce it. For example, again, the United States is unique, but I'll just let you know, an aspirin in a hospital. Nobody knows what it costs. I do. It costs $25 US. Now, if you knew that, you'd have your spouse bring it. You didn't know that artificial knee you're getting because you played so much tennis when you were young, made by the same company, same size, same everything, can vary in price by over 100%. But you don't know the price. Nobody knows the price. That's why it's all crazy. That's why prices are going up. And greed is powerful. So what we could do is put in a blockchain for healthcare, because blockchain is highly transparent. In other words, now I can see the price, unbelievably secure, cannot be altered. And you know what? You could bring down healthcare costs. Now, I'm just giving you one of thousands of ways we could lower healthcare costs. So there's two things that I just taught everyone I want you to understand. Number one, all trends are either a hard trend based on a future fact that will happen, means it can't be changed, or it's a soft trend, and if you don't like it, you can change it. It's based on an assumption. The second big thing that I want to make real clear to us is a trend by itself is academic, it's boring, who cares? Until you attach an opportunity to it. The minute you put an opportunity to either a hard or a soft trend, it bursts into actionable life. So from this program on, if somebody's talking about the future, is it a hard trend based on a future fact that will happen? And what's the opportunity? Or is it a soft trend that can be changed? What's the opportunity to influence it in a positive direction? Now, I did say I'd give you an example. I gave you an example of a soft trend. I want to fulfill my promise to you. Let me give you an example of a couple of examples of a hard trend, and then I'll let you ask me more questions.
Of course.
So, a hard trend. Let's take wireless technology. We went from 3G wireless to 4G wireless to 5G wireless. Is that it? No, we're going to have 6G wireless followed by 7G wireless. By the way, hard trend. We're putting a lot of data in the cloud. Is the cloud getting full? No, we're going to be putting more data in the cloud. That's a hard trend. You don't like AI? Well, can't we just turn it off? No, it's accelerating it beyond exponential rates. The key isn't the acceleration of AI, it's how are you applying AI? What are you using? How are you using it to do amazing, wonderful things? And how are you protecting yourself from the people that are doing amazingly bad things? Let me give you a non-technical example. In where you are, Great Britain, in London, as well as in a lot of Europe, as well as in Canada, as well as in the United States, and even China and Japan and other places, we've got an aging population. Now, that's not everywhere. There are many countries that have young populations, including in this continent, Mexico's got a young population. But we've got an aging population in many countries. So, baby boomers, are they going to all of a sudden get younger?
No.
Chronologically, no. So that means, whoa, there are amazing problems that we could pre-solve before they happen, and there are amazing opportunities. Let me show you how you can turn what I just said into a opportunity, something that doesn't exist today. Now I'm going to give everybody a multi-million-dollar idea right now, and you could do it. I'm named in dozens of patents because of speeches I've given and podcasts I've given where I've given out million-dollar ideas, and I'm named as the source of the idea in the patent. So let me give you one right now. Hopefully some of you would like to make some money and do this. As people get into their late 80s and especially their 90s, they fall. A lot of them fall. They're getting weaker, but their vision isn't that good. And most of them have reading, they have glasses, they need it for reading and distance. It's a little bit like a bifocal type thing or progressive. So when they're walking along, things are blurry. So what if we had a little rubbery thing you could put around a shoe of an older person, and in the front of it is a little sensor. By the way, that sensor I'm about to describe could be made by 3D printing, and it could be the size of a fly's eye right now. So, and it could communicate by what? Bluetooth. So what does it do? Well, it goes up to the hearing aid. And by the way, if the person doesn't have a hearing aid, we'll call it a hearing enhancement device. And when they're walking along, what'll it say? Step down, step up. Johnny's toy's in the way again. Now, just with that alone, could we keep a lot of people from falling? Well, yeah, you could. By the way, there is no thing like that right now. It doesn't exist. Now, let me ask all the people that are watching this. Would you say to yourself, we'll never see anything like that? I don't think you want to say that, because what I described could be made right now. Just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean it will exist. And with that big of an opportunity, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of people. Whoa, the opportunity's too big. A lot of people love to go fishing, boating. But as they get older, what happens? It's kind of hard to launch the boat. So what if you and I designed the easy launch boat for seniors, and we designed it really well? Would we know exactly where to export it to? Well, yeah. Would I be able to get a loan from a bank really easily? Yes, it's based on real numbers. Like I said, in the US, 10,000 turning 70 a day. I've got hard numbers to show that my company and what I'm implementing is going to have amazing growth, assuming that I designed it well. So what I'm getting at is, this is an entrepreneur's dream. Again, I've started multiple companies, and I've had, out of the 6 companies, 5 were profitable in the first year, 4 were national leaders in the first year. I've never had a business loan. So, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. All right, now I'm going to give you a chance to throw some things at me. I've got many things I could teach beyond hard and soft trends, but I've opened the door.
Wow, Daniel, that was amazing. I mean, you just made this podcast so much more valuable in terms of just sharing an opportunity that is definitely worth in the multi of millions. I can see it. That was very impressive. My immediate reaction is just in terms of how you are coming up with these types of ideas and concepts. because I know that there's a lot of people, myself included. Well, myself, I see myself as an ideas guy, someone who comes up with tons of ideas. It can be a good thing, it can be also on the other side something that creates a bit of chaos when you're creating so many ideas, and you need that focus to see it through, right? But for those that are maybe more on the integrator side, they're used to kind of following things through, but they lack the idea producing capability. Because I've always thought about this myself, and how do I explain to someone how to come up with these types of concepts? You've done a very good job in highlighting the soft trends, hard trends, and then what you've done is overlay data and find opportunity from it. But is there a specific process that you take to identify that? Because that was an amazing idea and concept, and you're backing it up and explaining it very clearly. And I can imagine being in a room in a bank or with investors, and they'd be throwing money at you because they can see the potential in the idea. How do you, because some people may say, do you know what, that's a great idea, but I want to come up with my own ideas in my own field, in my own specialisms. Is there a specific way that you do this? Or I
Well,
feel like,
luckily there is,
yeah.
and so let me give you exactly what all of you can do. And by the way, there is so much opportunity right now. There's more opportunity right now to not just change, but to transform every business, process, product, and service than there's ever been on planet Earth.
Mhm.
We're doing things that was impossible 2 years ago. We're doing today. And
Mhm.
by the way, we'll be doing things 2 years from now that are impossible today. But when you identify hard trends, you'll know what that is.
Mhm.
Those of you that have read any of my 7 books, the last one was Anticipatory Organization. The one before that was Flash Foresight, How to See the Invisible to the Impossible. Well, my Technotrends book back in the early 90s,
Mhm.
you can turn to a page that says Blockbuster is busted. And if you read under it, you'll see a description of Netflix. Now, I didn't know they would call it Netflix. You got to leave the parts out you can be wrong about. But you can tell what will happen when. As a matter of fact, back then, I was giving a speech to the American Booksellers Association, 10,000 people that sold books. And I said, within the next couple of years, you're going to see a virtual bookstore.
Mhm.
Well, what did we see? Amazon. So, I didn't know they would call it Amazon. You got to leave out the parts. I didn't know Bezos would start it, but I knew it would be started because I identified the hard trends and the related opportunities. And I knew I was going to be talking to booksellers. So therefore, the subject is books. What's the future of books?
Mhm.
Now I looked at, all right, what are the hard trends that would impact the creation of and the sale of books?
Mhm.
And I listed out the hard trends. Remember, you got to have an opportunity attached to it. You end up getting all of these really great opportunities,
Mhm.
but big lists never get done.
Mhm.
So I want to refine it down to what is the could do's. I don't have time for could do's. Things I should do. I don't have time for things I should do. I only have time for a couple things that I must do.
Mhm.
I also look at, I don't neglect these. What are the soft trends that could impact selling books in this case? And these are the things that are based on assumptions. For example, at the time, some of the biggest bookstore chains were expanding, expanding, not realizing, of course, that Amazon was about to happen. Uh, and what could they do about that? Could they
Mhm.
be part of that? Could they partner with Amazon early
Mhm.
and ride the wave and have both? You see, there's opportunities there. So, what are the soft trends and the opportunities to influence them? So you put it all into a refinery. And one other little thing I'm going to give you, and that is based on that big list of hard trends,
Mhm.
what are the predictable problems that I can pre-solve right now? Refine it down to one thing and take action on it. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to give you right now what I'd like every person that is viewing this to do. And that is I remember I said a few minutes ago, there's more opportunity than ever before. We're at a unique point in human history. So don't squander it. I would like you
Mhm.
to take 1 hour a week. By the way, that's doable.
Mhm.
And be an opportunity manager, not a crisis manager.
Mhm.
To not be an agile reactive, but to be anticipatory, anticipating the future and taking advantage of it. And in that hour, we'll call it an hour of power if you want. In that hour, I'd like you to list out the hard trends and opportunities, the soft trends and opportunities, the predictable problems and opportunities, refine them down, pick one, make it happen, and it'll be one of the best hours you have. By the way, I said do it every week. Why?
Mm.
Because there's new opportunities that come up. You
Mm.
can, there may be something that can elevate what you're currently doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just gave you a way to do it, a way to think about it. And of course, you could always go to burrus.com, burrus.com. I've got blogs on this subject. It is free. I've got a AI strategy report that you could download for free where I've reviewed 1,200 AI tools. And I'm giving you the top 5 in different categories with case studies of how to apply them. You can get that for free. I'm just about to release my 25 hard technology trends. By the way, that doesn't cost you any money. So, Burrus, I'm not selling you something. I'm here giving you something. Go to burrus.com. You'll find a treasure trove of things that you can just use to empower you and make it happen. And by the way, you could also buy my books.
That's always a good step. I think I'm gonna have to buy a few of them off the back of this call, Daniel. I'm a big believer in a value-driven approach, and you're kind of testament to that. No wonder you've grown such a large audience, and for me, it's really important to understand what you're doing so that other companies out there, other businesses can also replicate that. So it's kind of looking in the weeds, not only what you're saying, but also what you're doing. So it's really insightful for me. So Daniel, you mentioned that I believe I'm 100% with you on that. You don't need to convince me that we're in a time where there's a lot of change, there's a lot of opportunity to affect and disrupt industries like never before. And it would be, if I don't ask you questions on AI, it would be, it would be silly of me not to. Um, with the amount of research that you just mentioned that you're doing, what are the exciting things you're seeing from an application perspective? Because I'm a big believer in that as well. It's like I feel like there's a renaissance period happening, because before there was a limitation to knowledge, let's say, to some degree, and you'd need to buy in that knowledge. Now with AI, you've kind of unlocked the knowledge, but there's still there's this, I believe the next step is creativity. So it doesn't give you creativity, you need to have it yourself. But what are you seeing in terms of the application for AI that is really exciting you in the space at the moment?
Yes, and even though I do research all areas of technology, I've been researching and speaking about and consulting with companies about AI for many decades. So it's not a new subject for me. And I am an advisor to the Joint Chiefs in the U.S. and the military, as well as other countries, Dubai and so on AI and on its use. So I've got a lot of deep knowledge on AI. But to make it practical for all of us right now, and not to get too deep in the weeds, couple of things. Number one, right after ChatGPT started, OpenAI released it, I was interviewed by a major international newspaper, and they asked me, will humans be replaced by AI? And my answer was, humans will be replaced by humans using AI. So at this point, I want you to be relevant.
Mm.
So if you haven't gone beyond reading about it and actually using it, you're falling behind in relevance like crazy. You need to be using it to at least even know what it is and what it's capable of doing. Now, my AI strategy report will help you tremendously in being able to open your mind to see what can even be done. Remember, I told you about the 5 tools in all these categories?
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't even know the categories of application. How can you use it? What could you do with it? And it's amazing. Again, there's many, many different things. And I would say that if your company, the organization you're working for, the bigger it is, the more this will be true. The bottleneck will be your IT department. All right,
Mm.
because the IT department is there to protect the IT ecosystem and your company computer that we gave you and your company phone that we gave you. So we want to make sure it's secure. So everything that's in there has to be checked out by IT, and it's moving too fast for the IT department because they got other things to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like you to use this on your personal equipment,
Mm-hmm.
not just up. That way you can start using it now, because a lot of these tools, they'll say, well, we got to verify that and check it out first, and they're busy, and that might take them a year or two. Oh man, you're going to be way too irrelevant if you wait that long. So use it on your personal device, and one of the things that it really shines on is marketing and sales.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. So a couple of rules for you. Number one, it is your first draft digital assistant, not your last draft. What I mean by that is whatever you're trying to do, it'll get you 80% there in less than a minute. Well, great. I didn't have to start at zero. It'll get you 80% there like that. But now we need you for that last 20% because it's still a machine. It's still AI. We need you to humanize it. We need to bring you to it. We need you to, because you can kind of spot things that are AI generated. And because, again, we are imperfect. It's kind of like robots can paint a perfect picture, but it's the human little flaws that make that so valuable. I mean, the $1 million pieces are done by humans that are flawed because us humans are like that. So we need you to do that 20%. What I'm basically saying is we have a major productivity revolution about to unfold on planet Earth, making us all far more productive. I mentioned marketing, copy, and sales. Oh my God, it's fantastic. But secondly, looking at any repetitive task can be automated. So if you are doing something and repeating it, doing it over again, and again, why are you doing that? Your time is too valuable for that. That should be automated. Now, 2, 3, 4 years ago, you would have had to have found a programmer, or you would have had to go have your IT department automate your function, and they're going to be too busy. But today, you can get a tool and automate it quickly without even knowing how to program. Let's face it, AI can write a program for you and debug it. I mean, hey, you need a mobile app? Tell it what you want it to do, and it'll make one for you. So again, it'll get you probably 90% there, boom, just like that. And then just make little tweaks and refinements without having to know how to code. So I'm getting at, this is a giant productivity boost for everyone, and it's allowing us to do higher level activities, not the repetitive types of tasks. And it's true, there will be jobs that will be replaced, absolutely, especially the repetitive task jobs, including white collar, of course. But again, let's go to the higher levels in our thinking. It's called the cognitive domain. Let's get up into the problem solving, analysis, synthesis. There's an old saying, Alex, that you can't teach an old dog a new trick. My response to that is, good, we're not dogs. So if you're not willing to learn something new, you will not like the future, guaranteed. I'll guarantee it. But if you're willing to learn something new, regardless of your age, and if you realize your age is a benefit, why? Because you probably have some collective wisdom and experience that a young pup doesn't have. If you combine that with willingness to learn something new and a willingness to work with a young pup, whoa, fantastic. In other words, maybe we ought to work together a little bit more. So I think you'll see this elevating collaboration, cooperation. Let me give you an example of a CEO that solved the problem using AI very quickly. He used ChatGPT for this, by the way. And of course, whatever you're looking at today, it'll be far better in 6 months because it's accelerating it beyond exponential rates. By the way, it's a hard trend. Count on it. So here's an example. I had a CEO of a mid-sized manufacturing company who had heard me before, and he contacted me, wanted to share what he did. He said he had his largest customer text him. Again, his largest customer had his cell number. And he texted him, and he was really upset with something the company did. And the CEO told me I was about to respond, but he did what I suggested. And that is, wait, before you do anything, bounce it off of AI first. Bounce it off of, in this case, chat. Bounce it off of chat first, see what you get. Get some ideas. Remember, 80%, not 100%. So he didn't put the person's name in. He didn't put the company name in, but he put the problem in as the guy said to him, said, put in the prompt. He wanted it a response that would turn him around to being happy again. And in 20 seconds, he got a response and he looked at it. He broke the rule I gave him. What he did is he liked it so well. He said, man, this is great. I'm sending it just like this. He sent it just like that. He said it was about 20 minutes and that person called him and was completely happy and satisfied. Now, here's what the CEO said. This is the important part. I could have done that. But it's my biggest customer. Probably would have taken me an hour to an hour and a half before I really pushed the send button. But in this case, it took 20 seconds. I knew that was it, and I hit the send button. You see, what I want to do is free you. By the way, that's called productivity. You've got to design a marketing campaign. Well, let's get you up there fast. I just talked to, I do a lot of speaking all over the world, and I was speaking to a group, and after I spoke, a young guy came up and he said that he's using AI, but all of his counterparts in that company aren't. They're older. He was younger. So he was using it. They weren't. He said, I'm killing it. I'm getting promotions. I'm making more money. I'm killing it. These people are stupid for not using it. Now, again, he didn't mean they were stupid. They were stupid for not using it. Look, if you aren't and you're on this, get into it. Number two, get into it a little deeper. That AI strategy report, if you're anxious to take a look at that, and I really advise it, again, it's not costing you a dime. If you go to AIstrategyreport.com, download that baby and just start digging around. By the way, whatever tool is in there, there's a hot link, take you right to the tool. It's powerful. So let's start the journey. Let's continue the journey and let's continue to stay elevated.
That's awesome, Daniel. Yeah, like a lot of the things that you're explaining, especially coming from a sales and marketing background, the stuff that I've started to discover. And I was reluctant at first. Naturally, you feel that it's the old way that you're used to, that you're comfortable with. But then, like you mentioned, it's kind of like AI won't replace humans. It's humans using AI that replace humans. Once you start going down that rabbit hole and start using it to write up proposals, respond to emails, at least to, like you said, help you craft the first draft, it's insane how much time it can save you. One of the things that I've recently done because of the newest release of ChatGPT is actually just put it on voice and start speaking to it, just talking through a marketing campaign. And it can give you some really great feedback, just going back and forward with it instantly, which would otherwise take up loads of team members' times and you might not get the input or the feedback that you want. And this is available 24/7 on your desk and you can use it whenever you want and it can respond immediately.
Well, just as another aside to that, you have it on your smartphone, which you should do. And let's say you're out for dinner and someone puts the plate of what you ordered in front of you. You can take a picture of it, put it into chat, and it'll give you exactly what's in it, carbohydrates, protein, all of that stuff. And by the way, you can also take that picture and say, how do I cook it? And it'll give you exactly the menu of how to do that. So you didn't know you would do that. Let's say that you're in Japan and there's a sign and it's in Japanese. You take a picture of it and it'll be in your language, just like that. So it can do far more than you even think. I mean, and that's just chat. And by the way, as you might guess, there's Perplexity, which is an excellent search engine and very good. There's Claude. There's a number that do different things better. That's why it's good to know, what do they do different? What are the best tools that I want to use? And in that strategy report, just to show you some things that you can do, there are the top 5 tools for audio. For example, I have a friend of mine that needed surgery on his throat, and they said for about 2 months you're going to sound pretty bad. You're not going to sound like yourself. But he needed to do Zooms, and he needed to do some consulting. He needed to do some speaking. So what he did is he cloned his voice with one of those tools. And what he does is he speaks with his garbly voice, and it comes out with his clear voice in, by the way, any language. So did you know a tool can do that? Well, again, that's why you might like that report.
Mm.
or you are creating, you're trying to find some new hires for your company, and
Mm.
you're wanting to look for them on social media, or you're trying to sell a new product. Well, there is some video tools in there where you can type in what you want the human looking talent to say, and it'll look human. It's not. You can decide male, female, you can decide language, you can decide whatever you want, whatever look you want, you can get it there. And then it will talk in real time in any language, of course. And it can show the background video if you're selling of what you're selling. And you can change its intonation, you can change how it's presenting. Well, that doesn't take very much time. In the past, you would have had to, find somebody to be the talent. You had to give them a script. You had to let them read it. You could say, "Now I want you to do this. I want you to do that." Burn up studio time. You had to drive there, to drive back. I mean, boom, it's unbelievable. So there are so many different tools that you can use. And frankly, most of us don't even know what's possible. Well, maybe it's time we find out.
There's a lot to take in there, Daniel. Yeah. I want to take a step back because I know that we can go down this AI route and we can talk about that all
We
day.
could spend the whole time on
Yeah,
AI for sure.
we can. But I want to, because you mentioned I'm running one company. You said you were running at 1.6,
Yeah.
and all of them sounded pretty successful. And it sounds like you got everything together, right? But I know that in business there are times where it's not all so rosy, and you have to make some tough decisions, or you're just up against the wall a lot of the time. It would be good to understand with someone with that depth of business experience. Maybe you can give an example of some of the tough points or tough moments in running companies. But I think a lot of people have the same challenges when it comes to managing people,
Sure.
to managing relationships, and it's not also easy. And I think that we kind of sometimes forget about these things and we don't discuss them in too much depth. But from your experience running so many companies, also the stuff that you're doing now, like how do you help people when they're going through stuff like that? How do you help them?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. First of all, whatever your problem is,
Mm.
you can find what the real problem is by looking into a mirror. You are the problem.
Oh.
How you,
I like
because it's how you think, how you perceive, how you're reacting, how versus how you're anticipating.
that. Mhm.
So, in other words, instead of I got to change them, it's I got to change me.
Mhm.
And what can I do to elevate the situation? So here's a couple things that has helped me tremendously. Remember, I said that I started out teaching,
Yes.
and when I first started my first company, I already knew I had never had a business class.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to do business. I was a science guy. I was a researcher. I didn't know how to do business. So there were two things when I started my first business that I knew right away, and that is I knew I didn't know how to compete. So therefore, I didn't. I looked at what the others were doing so that I didn't do that. Because if I tried to do what they did, I'd probably lose. I never had a business class. So I did what they weren't doing. I just distanced myself from the competition. Boy, was that good.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, the more you look at your competitors, the more you will be like them. The more you benchmark and study the best of the best, the more you'll stay behind the best of the best because you can never catch up to them. The key here is using hard trends to jump ahead because they're going to be heading that direction anyway. So, number one, go beyond competition. Don't compete. Number two, I, again, I didn't know about business and I knew I'd have failure. That's kind of what you were talking about. There were things that would go wrong.
Mm.
And I knew, man, I came from teaching. I didn't have a lot of money. Teachers don't make a lot of money. So I had to learn how to fail fast.
Mhm.
And by learning how to fail fast, I learned how to learn faster.
Mhm.
So we have in business success metrics. We start something and I can measure, is it growing? Are there more sales? Are they, we have our metrics for success. Trouble is we have no metrics for failure. So we can be failing, and we can fail for years. I mean, for those of you that have started companies, how many times have you hired someone and it didn't take long to know this isn't going to work out, and you waited another year before you finally got around to letting them go, or longer? When in reality, if you know it didn't work out fast, you're doing them and you a favor for letting them go. So failing fast is really important. A third one, and again, I get into all of this stuff that I've learned in my books, but and that is that problem skipping that I talked about. So whatever problem you've got, that's not it. There's another problem. You're working on the wrong one. You're smart. That's why you can't solve it. So there's two elements to problem skipping. Number one, you're working on the wrong one. Ask yourself about 2 or 3 whys, and you'll get down to what the real problem is. I'll give you a very simple one on that to give you a couple of examples. I'll give you a non-business one and a business one. The non-business one is, I had a niece call me. She had her first job. And she called me and said, Uncle Dan, I can't save any money. Now, she knows it's possible. Her older sister is saving money like crazy. But Hallie can't save any money. So she said, Uncle Dan, I can't save any money. And I'm working really hard at saving money, but I can't save any money. And I said, well, Hallie, that's because you're working on the wrong problem. I wonder, why don't you work at how you spend your money? And of course, as you might guess, that helped her figure it out. See, she's working on the wrong one. So what's the real problem? I said I'd give you a business example. I was talking to a CEO a number of years ago of a large, one of the largest drug companies. I'll even tell you the name, Eli Lilly. And it's the first time I met the CEO, and I asked the CEO usually what I like to ask in the beginning. What's your biggest problem? Because I already know whatever they say, that's not it. Because they're smart. They would have figured it out by now. So he said, well, we got to hire about 2,000 PhD researchers, and we don't have the budget. And but we need to do this. And I said, well, now I'm starting to dig down because I knew that wasn't it. Why do you need to hire them? And he said, well, we're a drug company. We make all of our money on researching molecular design. And once we come up with a new molecule, then we come up with a new drug. And when we have new drugs in the pipeline, our stock price is up. Right now, we don't have new drugs in the pipeline. We don't have molecular problems that are solved. We need 2,000 researchers. We figure to ramp this up and try to get our price up. The trouble is, again, our price is down. We don't have the budget. So I said, well, then let's skip hiring all those guys. And he said, how do I skip all that? And I said, well, why don't we take all of your molecular problems, put them in a dozen languages on the internet, and say we pay for solutions. Well, they did that, and people were submitting, and they purchased the solutions they wanted, and ended up doing really well, really fast, without hiring anybody. Now, that was so successful, it was written up in the Harvard Business Review, and a number of companies have now done something similar. Now, my point is, he thought he had to hire 2,000 researchers. Well, wrong problem. So you see, you got to drill down. You got to find out what's the real problem. That's part one of 2 parts to problem skipping, because this is a really good one. And the second part to problem skipping is you could skip it altogether. In other words, I think I have to do this, this, and this, and this to get to this. Because that's the way it's always been. Really? Are there some elements in there you could skip? Are there some things you think you need to do that you don't have to do? And, so you can skip it altogether. So I use skip it a lot. And I've got a number of principles that I teach like that. Opposites work better is another one. You look in the exact opposite direction to see a solution. I'm sure everybody watching this has seen the movie Jaws, right? The first Jaws movie. And when they were filming that movie, they had a lot of trouble. They were almost ready to can the whole thing because they could not make a mechanical shark look real. I mean, it looked fake right away. Everybody could spot it. That's not going to make it. Nobody's going to believe that. And they were really in trouble until they did an opposite. What did they do? Let's not show the shark. Let's show what the shark sees when it's swimming underwater, looking at all those legs. And right? They skipped it. They didn't show the shark. And then after you got into the movie and now we're believing the story and into it, towards the end, they started showing the shark, and it didn't look real, but we didn't care. We were already into the story by then. You see, opposites work better. Well, I've got a lot of those. That's why, books and learning systems and things can help you learn more.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know we're short on time here, Daniel. So just in terms of, I guess the last question I have for you is when you talk about these learning systems, you've been generous enough to share a few with us. Maybe I can just, for the last question, see if you're generous enough to offer one more, because I can't get enough of this, to be honest. And I know that
Sure.
from my research, there's quite a few others that you do have.
Well, I will do that. You and I were connected on LinkedIn, and you mentioned that you liked my future view concept. So why don't we end with that?
Perfect.
All right,
Yes, please. Yeah.
because I remember what you said. All right,
Yeah.
so
Good one.
so here's what we're going to do. The future view concept was probably the very first that I started teaching,
Mhm.
and that is how you, how your kids, how your customers, how we all view the future, to a great extent, shapes how we act in the present. Let's face it, right now, there are people that are buying NVIDIA stock.
Mhm.
Right now, there's people that are selling NVIDIA stock.
Mhm.
What's their difference? Their future view of NVIDIA. There
Mhm.
are people that there's kids that are thinking of going to college. Other kids are thinking of going to drugs. So what's the difference? Well, actually, it's their future view.
Mhm.
You might have a really great customer right now that's thinking of leaving. Why? Their future view of staying has changed.
Mhm.
So, how you view the future to a great extent shapes how you act today. How you act today will shape your future. In other words, your future view will determine the future you. And I would suggest right now, everybody's future view, everybody's, is much lower than where the future reality is, because we're in a transformational time. We're not in a time of change. We're in a time of global, accelerated, transformational change. So, in other words, you're shooting too low. Your future is going to be much less than it could have been. I would like you to start after this thing, start collecting your little hard trends and opportunities, start looking at what do I know? I want a list of things I am certain about, not the things I'm not certain about. I want to be not reactionary and agile, because remember, agility came from sports. It's reacting as quickly as you can after a disruption or a problem. I want you to be anticipatory, anticipating disruptions and problems before they happen,
Mhm.
and then taking advantage of them so that you can elevate your future view. And by the way, that will elevate the future you.
Love it, Daniel. I think that was probably the best. No, I know definitely the best way to kind of end our discussion on this. I think that's something that people need to think about, myself included. Um, this has been a very eye-opening conversation. I truly mean that, Daniel. So thank you for giving up some of your time for this, and hopefully in the future we can reconnect, because there's a ton more things I'd like to unpack. But I know what I'm going to do next is definitely purchase some of your books. I think that there's a wealth of information that you've already shared, and it's just about digging deeper into that information. So I really appreciate the time, Daniel. I mean that.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the time to share and teach all of your, everyone out there. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad we're connected on LinkedIn. And please connect with me on LinkedIn. I would join the conversation. So thank you very much.